The Mr. Excel podcast is sponsored by Easy Excel. Learn Excel from Mr. Excel podcast, episode 1812. Increment the invoice number in the format of October 13001. Hey, welcome back to the Mr. Excel Netcast. I'm Bill Jelen. Today's question sent in through YouTube by Rupesh. Rupesh was looking at my earlier YouTube video about the next invoice number program, where we just had an invoice number like 1001, and so the macro was just adding one. But he said, well, what if your invoice number is more complex? For example, here it's October 2013, so his invoice number is OCT130 and then 001, and he wants to increment that to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But when we run this on November 1st, have it automatically change to NOV 13001, and in January, JAN 14001, and start counting up again. Well, yeah, that's possible with a little bit of VBA. So we're going to press, well, first off, make sure that your file is saved as .xlsm. If it's saved as .xlsx, you won't be able to have a macro. So save that, and then Alt F11. Start with Insert Module, and we'll just create a little module here. I call it Next Invoice. First thing, we're going to save the old invoice number from range G1.value. Now I'm going to go back to Excel. Make sure that wherever your invoice number is saved, this is cell G1. You'll have to change the macro for that. And then we're going to use the left function, just like in Excel, to get the 5 left characters. That'll be stored in left date. And then to see what current month it is, we use a VBA system variable called date. And instead of the text function to format it in MMMYY format, we use the format function. In Excel, you would use text. Here in VBA, we use format. And then we have to uppercase that. So in Excel, upper function. Here in VBA, UCase. Hey, this is great. I thought this was going to be a short little macro. And already we have 2 functions that are different in VBA from Excel. So normally we'd use upper and text. Here we're using UCase and format. If the left date, the left 5 characters, is equal to the current date, then we have to do something tricky. We're going to take the right of the old invoice, comma 3, that's the sequence number, add 1, and then format it in 000 format. So in this example, the right is 001. When we add 1 to it, that changes it to a 2. Using format makes it back to 002. And we will take the cur date, this variable, and concatenate it. If it is not left date equal to cur date, in other words, it just rolled over to a new month, then we're at November 13. We're going to take the cur date and reset it back to 001. And you see that's writing it back to range G1. So we have this macro called Next Invoice. How do we run this? Well, we can go to Alt F8. You see we have Next Invoice here. We can assign it to a shortcut key, maybe Control Shift N. Although it's funny, when I was testing this, I kept pressing Control N, Control N, Control N. I'm forgetting the Shift key, so maybe that's not a good way to go. Maybe what we could do instead is have a little auto shape out here. Just anything, right? You know, like new invoice. There we go. So our auto shape, shape fill, no fill, and then add the text box. Next invoice. That's funny. It's using white text in there because it was expecting the fill. Next invoice. All right, so you can format this however you'd like. And then finally, right-click the shape, assign macro, and assign it to next invoice. Click OK. All right, so you have your invoice ready to go to the next invoice. Press that macro, it goes to 02, 03, 04, 05, and so on. Let me change the system date down here. Just make it be November. Click OK. And now when we do next invoice, you see it goes to November 13th, 001, and then 02, 03, and so on. Hey, great idea from Rupesh. If you have some sort of a interesting invoice number, you can write a tiny little macro to solve that problem. All right, I want to thank Rupesh for sending a question in. I want to thank you for stopping by. We'll see you next time for another Netcast from Mr. Excel.